Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross from PTCGRadio, and we are back today with another deck breakdown. After a week or so of just popping up some videos from the Professor Cup format, which I invite you to go back and have a look at. So today we are looking at a deck which we haven't looked at before, despite it being for a long time really the deck to watch in terms of the Pokemon trading card game. The deck is Yveltal Garbodor. And the reason we're looking at this one today is because Pokemon.com have been very nice to us, and they have stuck up what I consider to be a very, very strong list from the Belgium National Championships. Now, this was piloted by a lady called Denise van Wijke, and that is going to be the last time I try and pronounce her name properly, because I'm not very good at pronouncing foreign names. I do apologise, but I love her list, and it is nice to actually have a female national champion over in Belgium, so this is a list we're going to be looking at today. Now, one of the reasons we're looking at her list is because she is a partner of Sami Sakoum, a very well-known British player who has seen a lot of success in the game and top cuts Worlds every year. He's going to top cut it this year. It's going to happen. So, although we can't say for certainty, there is a very good chance that if Denise is running a deck, if it's not Sami's list, it's going to be very heavily influenced by him. So that's another reason to add validity to this list. So, having a look at this list, essentially, it's a very straightforward, good list. Now, if you look at my previous deck breakdowns, one of the things I tend to look at here is consistency. What we're looking for is a really good, straightforward list. This deck all revolves around Yveltal. There are 3 Yveltal EXs, and it's there for 2 reasons. It's got 2 good attacks. Evil Ball for 2 energy does 20 damage, plus 20 for each energy attached to each active Pokemon. So it's kind of X-Ball plus 20. So if I've got an Yveltal with 2 energy on, that's doing 60 damage, 20 twice, plus the original 20 is 60. With a Muscle Band, that's 80 damage. If my opponent's got 1 energy on, that goes up to 100. So if I've got 2 energy and my opponent's got 1 energy, I'm already doing 100 damage for 2 energy, which is quite crazy. But a lot of the time here, we want to be using the second attack, Y-Cyclone, which for a dark and a double colourless energy does 90 damage, but it moves an energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. Now, the non-EX Tornadus from Emerging Powers back in the day, when it saw a lot of use in decks like CMT and Troll, this was a very good attack because it allows you to conserve energy. It means if you're going down, you're not having all your energy knocked off the field. There's nothing worse than taking a big KO and then being KO'd back and losing all of your energy, and then being end down to 2, for instance. So Y-Cyclone, and the general rule when you're playing an Yveltal deck is that you Evil Ball to get a KO, and if you're not getting an Evil Ball, you pretty much always want to be Y-Cycloning. There are exceptions when you're setting up future KOs, etc., but generally it's all about using Y-Cyclone. A lot of people make the mistake when they're playing Yveltal of just Evil Balling so you can get to good energy. Ideally, you want a DCE and a Dark Energy on Yveltal, you Y-Cyclone for 90, and you put the DCE on the bench to another Yveltal or another attacker. Now, what you'll notice in this deck is that there are no real backup attackers. There is a single Druddigon, and that is it. And Druddigon, you can only use his first attack, Revenge, if you get knocked out by damage, and remember that is damage. If your active gets knocked out by poison, Druddigon will not activate. And there's a lot of Hypnotoxic Laser in the format at the moment, so do be careful of that. But if you get knocked out by damage, Druddigon comes along and does 90 damage for a double colourless energy. This is fantastic. There's really 2 reasons you would use this. First of all, things like Black Kyurem EX and Rayquaza EX are still in the format. They are capable of big one-hit KOs, and even a card like Yveltal is going to struggle to get the KO on them. Generally, Black Kyurem EX and Rayquaza EX, both of them tend to have 1 energy left on them, which means you're going to need something like 6 energy on an Yveltal to get the KO with Evil Ball, and then you're very vulnerable to being KO'd and losing all of your energy. So Druddigon comes along for that. The other reason we would play Druddigon is because Yveltal has a lightning weakness. Now, there are certain cards in the format, mainly Raichu, which is Lightning type and get a quick KO. Raichu is a stage 1 Pokemon that with a full bench does 100 damage for a DCE. With Yveltal's Lightning weakness, that means Raichu is a good Yveltal counter. So what Druddigon really allows you to do is KO a Raichu without having to put an Yveltal in the line of fire. Because the worst thing that can happen is Raichu knocks out your Yveltal for 2 prizes, you knock out the Raichu for 1, and then they knock out your Yveltal for another 2 prizes with another Raichu. So Druddigon allows you to even up that exchange just a little bit. And that's the only other attacker, and the reason is, as I've said already, this deck is going for straightforward consistency. That's the entire plan. That's what Yveltal does. So we've got one Druddigon there, because we really need it for things like Black Kyurem EX, Rayquaza EX, Raichu, stuff like that. There's no Absol, there's no Darkrai, because Absol, it depends how big your opponent's bench is as to how much energy they do. Does essentially 20 damage times the amount of Pokemon they have out. We don't necessarily want that. It's in their hands, it's unreliable. Darkrai, yes, Darkrai's a good attacker, but it takes free energy, that's harder to get going. 3 other Pokemon in the deck. One of them is Garbodor, and this is the other half of the deck. It shuts off abilities. This deck is very straightforward and very simple. You have no abilities other than Jirachi. We'll get to that in a second. This is another reason we don't play Darkrai, because Garbodor shuts off Darkrai's ability, which means we've only got the attack, and as previously mentioned, the attack is too expensive. Garbodor shuts off abilities, Yveltal hits very efficiently, very fast, very hard. If you're playing against something like Aromatisse, you stop them moving energy, you smash them in the face. If you're playing against something like Blastoise, you stop them accelerating energy, you smash them in the face with Yveltal, etc. It's as simple as that. You shut off abilities, you hit with Yveltal. 2 Pokemon left, one is Jirachi. Now, I've spoken about Jirachi before. You'll see in a minute this deck doesn't need Jirachi. So, although I'm sometimes critical of people sticking in a Jirachi going, I've put a Jirachi in, my deck is now magically consistent, what Jirachi does do here is add a nice little consistency crutch, and there is nothing wrong with adding a little consistency crutch. You play it down, you search for a supporter. Don't be the person that's got a Garbodor in play with a tool attached and pop a Jirachi down. You won't be able to get a supporter, and you will end up looking very, very silly. It's good for early game if you can't draw a supporter. It's good for late game if you're drawing dead and don't have a Garbodor out. It's not an absolutely key card, but it will make you more consistent and it will help your deck to run nicely. The other card we have here is Sableye. He's used for Junk Hunt. You get 2 item cards back, and as you're going to see in a minute, as we look through our item cards in our deck, there are certain ones which we're going to want to get back, especially in certain matchups, and also we all have those games where no matter how consistent our deck is, I generally don't run less than 15 consistency cards, we're all going to run poorly at some point. We're all going to draw dead in some games. So Sableye allows us to jump out and use Junk Hunt if we're running a bit low. We're not always going to use Sableye, and there's a lot of games where we'll never use Sableye. But Sableye gives us options. It opens up other strategies that we wouldn't have. I've seen a lot of Yveltal Garbodor decks playing 1 or 0 Sableye. I think 2 is brilliant, because you're not overly relying on Sableye, but Sableye really allows you other strategies, some of which we'll talk about in a moment. So that's a Pokemon. In terms of the energy, we're playing 4 double colourless because double colourless is amazing. It helps to fuel Yveltal because it makes Y-Cyclone a 2 energy attack, and also Evil Ball just depends on how much energy you've got attached. And we run 7 Dark because certainly from my testing, I found 7 Dark to be the optimal. That's the number I've always come to when I've been testing these Yveltal decks of my own list. So it's very straightforward. The reason we play 1 Professor's Letter is that's kind of our 8th energy card. If we weren't playing this, we'd want 8 energy. This allows us to get 2 energy, so we can stick them in a discard to use Dark Patch, and it also means that we can Sableye to Junk Hunt for Professor's Letter to guarantee we've got an energy for the following turn. Sableye coming in handy. You're having an energy drought, Junk Hunt for Professor's Letter. Now, Dark Patch, very standard in Darkrai decks. It allows you to attach Dark Energy to Yveltal or Sableye on the bench. Why wouldn't you want to? The reason we're playing 3 here is because we're playing Sableye, we're playing Dowser Machine, and we're conserving space. 4 is the ideal here, but we can't always afford to play 4 of every card. The fact that we can Junk Hunt with Sableye, the fact that we're playing Dowser Machine, means we can afford to drop down to 3. It's not optimal, but in every deck, sacrifices must be made. Speaking of Dow's Machine, just very quickly, that is our ace spec of choice here. We're playing a slightly slower version of the deck because we're playing Garbodor, so we slow our opponent down while hitting. So that means we're better off playing something like Dowsing Machine, because this way we can get the trainers back. We're not quite so focused on getting a turn 1 computer search to get set up fantastically well. Computer search, discard 2 cards to search for one. Dowsing Machine, discard 2 cards to get a trainer from your discard. And you'll see as we go through, we're going to be wanting to get a lot of them back. Now, the one thing we're not playing here is Energy Switch. And the reason we're not playing Energy Switch is the reason I've just said. We're not so focused on, oh my god, let's get an Yveltal up as soon as possible, hitting as hard as we can, as fast as we can. We're basically relying on getting a Garbodor out and essentially using Y-Cyclone. We're not going to be going for the huge Evil Ball with this deck all the time. We don't need to. So we can rely on just using the odd Dark Patch and our manual attachments, and that should be good enough. That's why we can get away with free Dark Patch. That's why we don't need Energy Switch. So, starting off with the consistency cards then. For Juniper, very standard. It's the most aggressive draw supporter we've got. It's amazing. And also in this deck we want to be discarding, because if there are tools in the discard we can junk hunt them. If there's energy in the discard we can Dark Patch it. To be honest, the only thing you can't really recover from the discard is Pokémon, and you can just put them on your bench. Although be careful with your Garbodors, you're only playing 2 and there's no Super Rod. 4N again is amazing. This is very much a control deck. So you can sit there and junk hunt, you can get Garbodor out, you can sit there and Y-Cyclone, etc. Late game you don't always need that many cards, so Enning becomes very powerful. And early game, it's just good to get 6 cards. Late game, you can knock your opponent down to a small hand. They are the only supporters we want in this deck. There's nothing else that we want. Juniper gets us lots of cards, N gets us lots of cards early game and screws our opponent over late game, and we're playing a deck that doesn't really mind going down to a low hand size a lot of the time. Because there are no other supporters we want, we play Random Receiver. Now this essentially lets us play 12 supporters, which is often a little bit low, but bearing in mind you're playing Jirachi, you're playing Sableye with Junk Hunt, and you're not playing quite such a fast aggressive deck, so we can get away with 12 here. 12 is the absolute bare minimum number of supporters I would play with a Jirachi. I've seen a lot of people saying 11 and a Pal Pad. No. 12 and a Jirachi with 4 Ultra Ball is just about good enough. And what Random Receiver does is it guarantees you've got an N or a Juniper. This is why this deck doesn't play one Lysandre. You don't want to not Lysander. You don't want to start off early game with a Random Receiver and get your Lysandre out. That would be ridiculous. And the consistency is further improved here because we're playing 4 Ultra Ball. 4 Ultra Ball allow us to get our Jirachi or our Yveltal or anything else. Level Ball would get Jirachi, Sableye and Trubbish, but it wouldn't get the Garbodor, Yveltal or Druddigon. Ultra Ball is the only ball other than Master Ball, and we want to be playing Dowsing Machine here, which is going to get all of our Pokemon, and we play 4 to maximise consistency. And as I keep saying, this is what I love about this deck. It's built to do what it does, and it's no coincidence that a straightforward deck like this goes and does well at a national championships. So looking at the rest of the trainers then, nice and quickly, we have a single switch. This is a card which has always been in the format, and nice and simply, switch is good if we can't get a float stone, or, I mean, there might be odd plays where you've got to put your Yveltal active, then switch it to the bench, Dark Patch, and then retreat Garbodor when you get a float stone off an N or something like that. You know, you might end up having a switch and retreat in one turn. Mostly it's just there if you can't draw a float stone. It's an extra switching card. It's very good. Remember, you can only Dark Patch to bench Pokemon. We've also got Hypnotoxic Laser here because Hypnotoxic Laser is too gosh darn good. Automatic poison, 50% chance of sleep. We're playing 4 because it's amazing. Now, one big difference in a deck like this, or in this particular version of this deck, Burbank City Gym, that's not unusual. It adds poison damage, which is very good when you're playing Hypnotoxic Laser. 3 of them here. Now, a lot of people play 1. The majority of people play 2. Very few people are playing 3 nowadays. But the problem is, all of your Pyroar decks are starting to play a load of Tropical Beach. And a lot of decks that play Stadiums are starting to play 3 or 4, so only playing 2 Verbank City Gym often left you without 1 late game. This build of this deck, Denise has basically gone, you know what, let's just play 3 of these, because that's going to work. And I applaud her for that. We've also got free Muscle Band. Muscle Band adds 20 damage to your attacks, incredibly good with Yveltal. And we've got free Float Stone to make sure you can have free Retreat. Both very, very good, and of course, you need tools for Garbodor, because Garbodor's Garbotoxin only works when you've got a tool attached to Garbodor. Generally, you want a Float Stone attached to Garbodor for the free retreat, but a Muscle Band will do at a push. There's only 2 other things which I believe I haven't talked about here, and that is one of them is the single Pokemon catcher. Flip a coin, if heads, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active. This isn't a card you need. It's a luxury. It allows you to pull off unforeseen plays. If you play one of them, your opponent might not know you play it till late game. If you're in a best of 3 series and your opponent sees 1 Pokemon catcher, they may well assume you're playing more, which is going to make them play more cautiously, which is going to play very nicely into your hands. Yeah, you might hit a Tails and it will be wasted, but it's not a key part of your strategy. It's there as a one-off, as a luxury. Bearing in mind, Dow's Machine gives you another Pokemon catcher, although to be fair, there's nothing worse than Dow's Machine discarding 2 cards for a Pokemon catcher and then flipping a Tails. And you can Junk Hunt for it to use it again. It's just a really nice clutch card, and it will win you games. It won't win you every game, and there's going to be some frustrating Tails, but at the end of the day, it will win you some games. It's an extra little thing that you can use to try and win the game, and that is good. And the last thing, 2 Enhanced Hammer. Gets rid of a special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, against some decks, like this particular deck, that will be invaluable. It will be fantastic. Get rid of a DCE. They Y-Cyclone, move a DCE to the bench. You discard the DCE, knock them out, and then you've knocked off their energy in a way which we've talked about you don't want happening. But against a deck like Plasma, these can be absolutely killer. But you've only got 2 of them, unless you use Sableye to Junk Hunt for them. Against decks like Plasma's a good example, but Aromatisse is a better example, especially if they revolve around special energy, because Plasma's got a lot of 2 energy attacks, and they use a lot of Chorus Machine, whereas things like Aromatisse don't tend to use Chorus Machine and tend to need more energy on the field. If you play against, say, an Aromatisse deck which needs 3 or 4 energy on the field, you're going to auto-win with this. Against a Plasma, it's not going to be an auto-win because they can knock out your Sableyes quite easily and then just use Thunderous to get the energy back, but it's going to slow them down and it's going to help you. And all you need to do is get both of your Enhanced Hammer in the discard as soon as possible, and then you Junk Hunt, double Enhanced Hammer, Junk Hunt, double Enhanced Hammer, or if they're only attaching 1 a turn, Junk Hunt for an Enhanced Hammer and a Laser, poison them, knock all their energy off. It's an extra little tactic. And that is what makes this deck so good, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2 things I love. First of all is the consistency. Yeah, 12 supporters is a tiny bit low, but there's a Jirachi with 4 Ultra Ball, and you've got Sableye there, which is going to help you immensely. Secondly, there's little tricks. Things like the 3rd Verbank City Gym to maximise the use of your lasers, the 2 Enhanced Hammer, the 1-off Pokemon Catcher, along with your Junk Hunting Sableye and your Dowsing Machine, give you things which a lot of decks aren't going to have. And it's this mixture of the simplicity and the straightforwardness of this deck and the consistency matched with those couple of little tricks to help, which I think makes this probably the best Yveltal Garbodor list I've seen, bar none. So there's the list, go and try it out, and as you should be expecting, quite shortly I will put up the very first game or 2 that I've played with this deck, so look forward to that. Make sure you like, subscribe and all that good stuff. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching PTCG Radio.